This is my installation of a Senville 9000 BTU mini split system. I'm actually using it more for heat than for air conditioning. It's replacing for air conditioning a 6000 unit that was a window unit. That actually did the job pretty well for this house and pretty far north. If I had 3 weeks in a row of 90-degree temperature, which has happened before, yeah, it kind of taxed that air conditioner pretty badly, but anything less than that, it did fine. 9,000 is like plenty for this place. And heat-wise, we'll see. I'll be doing more video in a month or two about heating and how that's worked out. I put a frame in here to cast a little pad. Threw a bag down last night, it kind of disappeared. I tamped it out today just to make sure everything was tight and flat. Put these 2 stakes in. I'm going to have 2 towers, 3 bricks high, on top of a pad that's going to be just under the soil line on purpose because I don't want the frost heaving it up. So another 2 bags of cement will go in on top of that, and then pretty much a stack of 3. And I think I'm going to put a wood header on top too, something I can screw the legs of the unit into. But I got to make the wood fastened. That's what the stakes are partly for, as you'll see. So I think it'll work. Probably going to be in this place till I'm 80, and I don't see myself when I'm even, a little older going out here and trying to dig this out in the middle of the winter. We get a lot of snow some winters. Don't get this detail wrong. I've watched so many videos, and almost none of them have it right. So what if a kid came and he was playing around and it comes out? Cool, hey look, hey, this comes out too. Hey look, I can put my hands in here. Now if I had the hot leads going to these outside uninsulated posts, and this is ground of course, I mean I'd be fried. This way they're protected, there's plastic around them. You really have to try to get to that wire. I mean you'd have to try. You're not just gonna stick your hand in here and get in trouble. So do it right. I do have hardware cloth. And there she is. The form removed. Cast a nice little block there. Can hit some spacers while it was drying to keep everything straight. I might change the 2 boards and tops to 2x4s, or I might leave the ones in there. That one's kind of twisted though. I'm gonna have to do something about that. But anyway, the ceramic is done. My little drywall works. It should be below the frost line too. And I'm going to bury it in, so you won't even see the slab, you'll just see the pillars coming out. It doesn't matter if you use red or black for L1 and L2, or vice versa. But mostly I use black for L1 and red for L2. Here I changed my usual pattern and used red for L1, simply because the air conditioner does the same thing. All through here they use red for L1. And even that little whip cable that you attach is going to have red for L1 too. So that's why I did that. I used watertight. I really couldn't see a good pattern as to what people were doing coming out of these boxes. Very few ran watertight all the way back to the unit in the house. I saw 2 people who did that. I've watched so many videos. Usually they have the other cable, which I think is rated for outdoor, and maybe just a pinch joint in here. One guy had a nice joint that had a seal in it. I'm kind of doing a probably not totally kosher way of having this watertight go up the cable several inches, and this will be tie wrapped onto the bundle in like 2 different places over a foot or more, and it'll all be under wrapped and all be inside of a duct. So that's my compromise. Kind of wanted it out here for weed whacker protection. I never use a weed whacker, and maybe in my dottage I'll have a lawn crew here though. It took a little figuring to get this panel off. Didn't want to break anything. Eventually I got it off though. There are 2 screws you got to take off to even start getting it loose. And then getting this box open was kind of a hassle too. But once this panel was off, these tabs are clear of that panel. So you kind of got to take that panel off to get this open. And then I hooked in the line set cord. Came with the line set. And I'm using number 1 for red because that's kind of what they did in this whole thing. They used L1 on 1 and red for L1. I also put a little clamp in here just to keep it from yanking out of the terminals. I didn't put a lot of pressure on this clamp. It's not really meant for this type of cable. It's meant for flat cable, so you don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on a round cable like this. They seem to suggest using these inboard holes, I guess using the anchors to plaster. Maybe you'd want to avoid the studs. I don't know why. I'd rather use the outer holes and hit the studs. Which is what I did with deck screws, 6 deck screws. I've got it level, a little bit of bias maybe that way. Dead level, it's still going to look that way off the top there. It's not quite level if I go by the molding. So there's my hole. Slight downward angle. I was going to put an even steeper angle on it. I put what people suggest, like a 1/4 inch or so. I got it glued in with that expanding foam. I'm going to give it a little bit of time to expand and to harden before I start putting the unit through the hole. And these are pole barn walls. They're a little thicker than most walls. It's basically a 2x4 wall inside of a pole barn wall. So I was really hoping I didn't hit anything. It took a lot of research to put it here. I actually wanted it more over this way. It probably would have been a bad idea anyway. Pounded it, so I made a little dent in the metal siding. It took a lot of pounding to get a noticeable dent in it, and then I drilled from that side the other hole. Cut the pipe just by eye. It turned out to be exactly right. I was worried I cut it too short and it's wasting that piece, but it was exactly the right length. Nothing to spare. Let it set in that stuff to glue it in, and then away I go pretty much. And I got the stub wrapped, so it's ready to go through the pipe. I'm hoping this section will go through too. I may have to take the little caps off. Probably not. I'll have to feed all this cable through first. The factory ends would have probably worked for me. Unfortunately, I watched Benjamin Selstrom's excellent video on flares for this job. And yeah, these don't really pass. They're probably passable in that there's no scratches in them. So they succeed in that way, but they're just so tiny. I hardly even know they're 45 degrees because they're so short. A lot of burr crap on the sides. They're just real small, especially compared to what he's been doing. Also, they give you nuts with the unit that are heavier than these. There's one of each on the back of the unit, and there's also a bag with one of each. So the only way to put those on is to cut the flares off anyway, put your own flares on. And apparently they thought it was worth giving you those heavier connectors. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut off these flares, make my own flares, and put the other nuts on. And of course I got to cut this whole thing down quite a bit too. Do a few for practice here. I got about 5 feet to spare. Doing it again just to show. Open this up wide enough to get these 2 bottom ones clear. Then you can feel the pipe on the 2 bottom ones. And tighten it up. There we go. Once it starts making contact, keep nudging it forward. The more patient you are and the smaller you make the nudges, the less of a burr you'll end up having. At some point, I think right now I could probably just break it off. It fell off. The next step is to deburr them. You want to do that, the pipe upside down, and you want to get the nuts on first. And I don't have a proper deburring tool, but I'm just going to rough them with the right back nuts on before you even start. These are the nuts they give you, compared to the nuts that came with the line set. They're pretty comparable, actually. Yeah, this is probably the right way to go. I was probably going the other way last time. Ended up with a lot of grooves on it last time, though. So I'm trying to see if I can avoid that. Yeah, I did. I had these grooves I didn't want to get in. It feels pretty good. Now the fit isn't supposed to be loose. It's supposed to be a little bit tight actually, or it won't fully close until you muscle it on. Yeah, that's about right. And you want it to stick out about 1/8 of an inch Some are saying up to 3/16. I'm going to try that. Oops, here's my other nut. Now this guy was a real bargain. It's a copy of one that looks, the Pro one. Super expensive tool. This thing was only 20 bucks, a little over 20 bucks. Well, I need to put some lube in that cone. It actually had a little lube on it. I'll put more lube on next time. Now the fancy ones stop at a certain point. I don't know if this will do that. I just gotta back it off. They're pretty tight. Probably went too far. It's gonna be a learning game. Tell me why. Did pretty well. Did a little better job deburring that one. Still a little rough around the edges there. I'm gonna have to fix that. But it's perfectly nice inside, I bet. This other one, I got a little scratch deep in there. I'll probably redo that one. Okay, I'm gonna put just a drop on this tool in the tip. I want to pick a real straight spot on the tubing. I'm getting these little indents. You do have to go, so you can't go for the wider spot. You got to go for one that just barely fits it. That's the right size. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to balance the tubing in this notch between those two rollers. And I'll tighten it down on it. I'm not sure which way is really the most proper way to do it, but it seems like if I go the direction of the roller cutter, and the more patient you are with small increments here, the better it'll probably come out as far as burr goes. I think it'll just break off at this point, yep. So I probably should have bought some proper deburring tools. Burr isn't bad at all, though. Try to use the square side of the blade, not the sharp side. Just to run through carefully here. I want to be careful. That's where I screwed up last time. I got a scratch deeper in the flare. Made a nice flare, but had one scratch deep in the flare. It probably would have been okay, but why bother? I got to cut off a few feet, so I got plenty to practice in, and really no cost to make these flares at this point. 5/16, I think is what I want. And you're supposed to make it stick proud about. One guy was saying 2. I guess you're saying 1/8. Last guy said 3/16 even. That's kind of probably excessive. But I'll go like between 2 and 3 millimeters ish, and then slap the tool over it to compress it all the way out. I put my drop on there, and I'm upside down. The dents are on the other side. There's little dents on the other side of the tool to receive this guy, and I don't want to do it backwards. Let's do that again. This time with the holes on the upside. I want that 5/16 hole for this 1/2 inch ID. I'll stick it about 2 to 3 millimeters proud. Holes on top this time. Slide it in. Get it centered up. This in until it starts to low resistance. Then shake it. So it centers itself. Pretty much is, I'm sure. Of course, you want to be careful at this point where you could dent the the piping if you weren't careful. Okay, and now I'll simply crank it. I feel a lot of resistance, just back off. I'm there, I think. So let's take it off at this point. I'm probably going to do this one over again and probably not make it so long, although it looks really nice. I could take emery cloth to the outside of it probably. Is that a little scratch on the inside too? Real small scratch right there, I didn't notice before. So yeah, I'm definitely going to do that one over again. But this one's looking pretty good. I got a little tiny scratch there, but it's not very deep. Actually, I got rid of it. Yeah, so that's actually pretty nice. I think that's a keeper. And then, so the nut still go over it nicely. Yup, barely snags it. So I'll do this one over again, just for yucks. Okay, to start with, I gotta be real critical about being pretty straight. You don't want to have any curvature at all where you're going to be cutting it, which is a tall order. Use the 2 bottom rollers, kind of get it centered. Just grab in there. I like to go this way, so the cutter's hitting it first, psychologically anyway. I was just going to say at that point I could probably break it off, but it just fell off. Got a real slight outer. Again, I'm going to use this side of the blade and to knock off any hangers. I got a nice flare on this, but I did dent it a little here. It's going to be hard to avoid. In fact, I don't know if I'm really that straight here either. I'll go back to here. And I'm going to hit it between those 2 little rollers. That one cutter would have been nice. Probably should have spent the extra. But my thoughts are to keep tool prices low. Not to avoid having tools, but to keep the tools economical. And the economies of this whole thing are something I've been thinking about. You know, I probably should have gone with a lower end model since I'm foregoing the warranty by doing it myself. Get Rossmann on this no warranty crap. Get it down to where it falls off almost, because give me the nicest, smoothest end. Just using the dull side of the knife. So let's see if I'm catching a burr. Very slight one. Actually, that cutter's working nicely. It's not leaving much of a burr at all. I'm going to get the tip. I'm going to get the square side of the blade. Feels pretty good except for right there. Caught a little bit. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, what did I learn before? Whole side up. A nut on the tube, whole side up. No dents. I got a little more curvature here than I would have liked. Make it proud, about 2.5 millimeters by eye. That's probably nice. Center it on the, keep calling it cable. I did a lot of CATV, and it's really like aluminum tubing, even more sensitive than this stuff. So I kind of got a feel for this stuff. I'm going to make this tight. I'm not going to reef it any more than that. And I'm going to make this till it's reasonably tight. I feel that extra resistance picking up. I'm trying to let the tool shake because that's what's making those dents. And that's enough. How'd we do? Looks pretty nice to me, except I got an outer burr on it. All the way around, kind of. Is that a burr? It's odd. The flare itself looks real nice. No scratches. Fills the whole flare. Looks nice and shiny. Oh yeah. And I don't feel that being proud, that outer edge. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. And I put a flare at the end of this just to test my flaring out. And I did crank this all the way till the handle popped. And it does pop, so it does have that feature. It may have been a little sticky in the first use, but it really doesn't do anything as you keep cranking past that anyway. So they're both fully flared, as you can see, even though I didn't pop this one. And this one, I went till it popped. Pretty nice flare, though. There's nothing wrong with that. So at this point, I've cut my line set down to about 5 feet and did some fancy bending on it. I'm pretty skilled at bending that kind of stuff after decades in the cable business. So I put everything together outside loosely, let the pressure out of the top unit, hand tight right now. I bought this torque wrench because I really had no other torque wrench that was suitable for this job. Didn't have a set of crow's feet to go on a regular torque wrench. So I've run into situations like this before, so I figured I'd go ahead and break down and buy a cheap torque wrench. I also bought a 3-pack of adapters. Hopefully one of them will work for this job. And I bought a gauge set. This gauge set is really nice. It's got a sight glass window. The thing about it that I don't like is the scales are all metric, so it may not be the units I wanted, but it'll adapt. Look things up. I really don't need too much detail on the scales anyway. Just going to look at up and down at this point. I don't have a nitrogen to test it. I bought this thing in lieu of nitrogen just for testing. This is actually a kit that you can use with instead of a vacuum pump, but I'm going to vacuum the line. I do have a vacuum pump to use, so I will be evacuating the lines, but I may juice the lines temporarily with this stuff just for pressure testing. This stuff's sort of a joke. I wouldn't recommend it. They're marketing this as a way to sweep out your system and not vacuum it if you're not going to vacuum. I am definitely going to vacuum. I did buy this anyway though, because I knew I was going to reflare my fittings. Pretty much knew I was probably going to do that at least at one end. I ended up doing both ends. So I've tightened these up. I did use a torque wrench. However, when buying this wrench, I didn't check the range of it. It turns out the bigger nut is a little bit higher torque than this is designed for. I covered the first one right on spec. It gave me a good feel for the next one too. So pretty sure I got that. Anyway, I got this stuff going. I did leave the one tubing, took the one tubing off, let it hang while I shot through the system with this to get any loose dust out of the system. So that's all that did. Not very good use for my 35 bucks. And also there should still be a little bit of pressure in there, I'm hoping. I didn't go through my gauges though because I didn't have the adapters. I had an adapter for my gauge, but not for this to the gauge. At any rate, everything's torqued up. This is put back on. A little residual pressure in here. I'm going to do a quick bubble test on these fittings, although it's not much pressure. So I did that as an excuse not to use nitrogen. At least I got to blow the system out a little bit with this. Kind of a waste of money. Be a lot better off taking that 35 bucks and investing into nitrogen if I was going to do more of these. I didn't really see a cheap nitrogen setup though. Looks like I did get a little pressure in there with that cleaner stuff. So I'm just going to let it sit here for a half hour while I eat something and see if it moves. Just right on that red white border there. And now I'm ready to start vacuuming the line with a vacuum pump on loan from John Audio Tech. A lot of steam coming off. Let it run for a while. And meanwhile, I gotta finish this wiring. So that means I'm gonna chop this guy. I hate to do it. Been almost 20 minutes. I still see a little bit of steam coming out. I'm gonna let it go for a full 30 minutes, I guess. It hasn't really gained any more vacuum. It's about 28. Negative 28, it'll probably stay there. It's a good half hour now. I'm going to close the valve and take her off. See if she holds the vacuum. Still about 28. Well, I was unable to make it work with this block. Having all these wires blocked in there. There's just not enough room down here. I don't know how that's supposed to work. If anyone got that to work, let me know what you did. It's been probably a couple hours now since I was doing some other chores, neatening up this stuff. So it hasn't moved even a little bit. It's right where it was, 28, 29. So now I'm going to find my Allen key and I'm going to let out just enough pressure to make this climb above zero, only by a few pounds. And when I get to that pressure, I'll stop. I'll tighten the key back. And then I can remove this with just the slightest loss of coolant. Well, they made these so tight I can't break them open. I even looked on the video to make sure that they weren't reverse or something like that. I can't make them go either way, but yeah, they're supposed to go counterclockwise to loosen. Okay, got them both broken loose a little bit. I started to let pressure back in. I want to go positive here. I'm just below zero now. I want to go just a little positive. Alright, well that's good enough. And now I'm going to unthread the takeout. That little bit of escape is nothing. And now I can put the caps back on. Give them a little snug. Of course, first I have to crank them both all the way open. until it stops. Just a little munch. Don't force it. Now I've unleashed the beast. Well, that almost wraps up the outside work. Still got to drive some screws to those feet, and I got a kit to put a cover on this thing. Actually, it's a used kit from John Audio Tech. I'll have to find some kind of hood for the top, or make one. But I got a long straight piece that'll easily cover my straight spot. Pretty short run. All done, except for picking up the junk. I've been using the system for a couple weeks now. Seems to work fine. Right now it's actually heating just real slightly in the house. I'll do a video in the future with more detail about my philosophy of using this particular unit. This is a 28 SEER high efficiency type unit. I'll come with a follow-up video on some of those details and how it's been working out on the bills and everything else in a few months. If you're a homeowner considering this DIY, then I would certainly watch many videos, not just this one of course. I watched hours of videos.